Hello friends. So today's video is going to be the first of what I'm hoping to be a new video series here on my channel. Because this is the very first one that I'll be doing, I will give some introduction into what I'm hoping for this video series as well as the origin of it. So the idea is to combine book recommendations with current events, but fun, happy, uplifting, interesting current events, and the book recommendations will be tied to whatever these events are. Most of the time it'll be fiction, but sometimes maybe I'll recommend a nonfiction, and then I'll also mention either a charity or some kind of organization, business, or even an individual that I wanted to highlight and kind of get the word out about, so that in general the entirety of the video is something meant to be happy, uplifting, and positive. The origin for this video idea is that my husband and I often, when we're eating dinner, like to try and look into current events. We discuss current events, and then sometimes when we're walking our dog, we then chat about what we saw and what's going on in the world. But I think I'm not alone in saying that sometimes it can just be so taxing and emotionally draining to always see, because there is always negativity in the world. It is always there. And it can be something that affects us quite negatively. And so by no means do I think that this is going to erase out all of that. And I'm not trying to encourage people to not inform themselves, but rather this is meant to sort of just be that moment where you can have a break from all of the negative news, from all of the really disheartening news, and you can maybe see something that lifts your spirits. I'm kind of the mindset that in order to try and do our best, to put our best foot forward when trying to make things better, we have to sort of ensure that we are in the best place we can be. And I just think that's hard to do when you're constantly flooded with so much that is making you feel a little bit down, making you feel like there's no hope. And so that's what I'm trying to do here, is just good news, happy news, interesting news, and then of course tying it in with some books. Sometimes the news will be book-centered, other times it will be 100% unrelated to anything to do with books, because I just sometimes find that, I don't know, I like seeing happy stories, I like seeing cute pictures of animals, I like seeing stuff that has nothing to do with what I typically talk about. But the very specific thing that made me want to do this is that there's this news story about, I think it was through Google, where an employee was saying that the artificial intelligence was gaining sentience and it wanted to be treated with the rights that a human being would be given. And I heard that story and I was like, oh, this kind of reminds me of Scythe by Neil Shusterman. That was sort of the first spark of, it would be kind of cool if I could take these stories, except for not everybody stays up to date with the news. Not everybody's going to have seen these. And I thought, well, I can just tell people about these stories, and then I can tell them about the books that I think would be good if they found that story interesting. So in that sense, if you found that story interesting, one, I'll have a link for more about it because it is fascinating. And it does remind me of Scythe by Neil Shusterman, in that there is something called the Thunderhead, which is essentially the cloud that eventually gained sentience. And it actually did a lot of good for humanity, but then you do start to see its internal struggles and its thoughts and its curiosity about, what does it feel like to be a human being? What does it feel like to have a physical form? The entirety of the trilogy is called Arc of the Scythe. I am a big fan of the trilogy as a whole. I do think from book to book, it shifts in who it's focused on or what it's focused on, as the first book follows two individuals who are the apprentice to a man who is a scythe. So what that is in the future, the far future, mankind has conquered death. The only threat to mankind is overpopulation, and this is as a result of the Thunderhead taking care of everybody. There's no fear of corruption or individuals becoming dictators or anything like that. The Thunderhead takes care of everyone, but it cannot deal with the threat of overpopulation. And so there is a revered group of individuals known as Scythes, whose jobs it is to kill people. They call it gleaning because it sounds a little nicer, but at the end of the day, what they are is essentially glorified executioners. And our main characters, without really wanting to, become apprentices to a scythe, a man who very much takes his job seriously. He has a lot of respect for the art of what he does, the art, if you will. But not everybody cares for this process the same way. Not every scythe really tries to handle everything as respectfully as Scythe Faraday, the character that is the mentor to these two young individuals who would be Citra and Rowan. It's a really interesting story. You do, of course, have to suspend disbelief for this one, but I think that the real tie-in as far as with that one news story really comes more into the forefront in books 2 and 3 when you start to get more of the Thunderhead and therefore more of a bird's eye view. You kind of zoom out from our characters and you see the world, really truly so many things going on around the world. And I just think it's really fascinating, really interesting, kind of an examination on societies, as a lot of dystopian type of stories are. But I want to jump into the happy news stories. So I'm going to mention 2 that are unrelated to books. The last one I'll mention is related to books, and it's related to the individual who I wanted to shout out in this video. Unsurprisingly, if you know anything about me, this first story is not going to be a shocker. It has to do with a dog, and it's actually... It's really silly. It says a new winner is crowned at the, quote, World's Ugliest Dog competition. And the dog's name is Mr. Happy Face, and he is very silly. He's very old. It says that Mr. Happy Face is Chinese crested Chihuahua mix. His owner actually adopted him here in Arizona, only a couple of hours away from where I live, so yay, Arizona, I guess. But anyway, the owner... she said that she adopted him last year. He is an older dog, and her quote is, "I believe that this humble soul is also being an example in subtle ways to help humans realize that even old dogs need love and family too." Here's another quote, and it's just so wholesome that it makes me want to cry. So the owner says, "He was the happiest creature that I had ever met. He hobbled up to me and chose me. I vowed that day he would be so loved that he would never remember how awful his previous life had been." The next story is a discovery of a 30,000-year-old baby mammoth found in Canada. The story says that Canadian miners discovered a near-complete mummified baby woolly mammoth while searching for gold. The young female animal is thought to have died during the Ice Age more than 30,000 years ago, according to a news release from the government. The woolly mammoth is the first near-complete and best-preserved mummified woolly mammoth found in North America. I already think that story is really cool, but some of the comments are pretty amusing. There's one that I found, and it said, "Every time they find something from 20,000 plus years ago, it really puts into perspective how much my life truly doesn't matter." The last story is book related. It has to do with some new Witcher covers, and for the first time, finally, we will be getting the entirety of the series in English in hardbacks, and they're going to have really amazing artwork. They've released the first few covers, and I'm so excited. But there is some news about the covers that I think is a little bit different and interesting. I actually kind of like the idea. At first I was like, really? And then the more I thought about it, I'm like, that is kind of cool. So I wanted to give you the information, show you the cover images. So it says, "Witcher fans rejoice. This fall, Orbit will release the complete Witcher series in hardcover with stunning new covers." I'll have the cover artists that they mentioned linked down below so you can check them out. But first up in September, they have Blood of Elves. And then also in September, they have Time of Contempt. It goes on to say that more editions will follow this fall, capping off in December with the deluxe hardcover edition of Sword of Destiny. The hardcover edition will feature 6 full-page interior illustrations, and it's the perfect companion to the illustrated edition of The Last Wish. For the rest of the series that they're doing, I think it's a really interesting choice to have different cover artists for each of the books. That's the part that when I first heard it, I was a little unsure because I so enjoy having books that match. But I also think this is almost like a really great way to get to see not only, of course, different styles, to have more artists recognized, but also it's like having art prints for the series. It kind of feels like if you took your favorite art prints from your favorite artists and then those became the covers for the series. I think that's kind of cool. And ultimately, I'm sure the sizes and everything will match, but all together, it's just going to be all these different amazing art pieces, like a showcase of all this great art for Witcher. So I actually am really excited about it. If you are somebody who prefers the style to be consistent, they are going to be coming out, if you haven't seen these, they're actually really cool. They're going to be coming out with this somewhat minimalistic style of cover in, I believe, tall paperbacks. Orbit is known for making their tall paperbacks. And the whole series, I believe the spines will have, you'll see, I'll put up an image of it. The spines are going to have their own design, and then all of the covers are going to have something rather simple, but they're going to follow a similar style and color scheme, and those also look amazing. Do I love the Netflix permanent sticker? No. Do I hope that it's one I can take off? Yes. Will it likely be able to be taken off? I don't know. Probably not. But I still really like these covers, and I have been saying for years, for those of you that have been around for most of my channel's time, I have wanted a nice set of The Witcher books in English for so long. So I'm so happy that they're finally giving it to us. This perfectly segues into the individual that I wanted to highlight here. So there is an artist that I have been following for years, and I've actually, I guess you could say, collaborated with them to some degree, because if you've never seen on my channel, I occasionally do violin videos where I either will compose music and then play all of the parts on my violin and put it together, and the music is inspired by a book series or a character that I love. And I also sometimes will take, whenever we get adaptations and there's great music in these fantasy adaptations, I will sometimes make an arrangement of those and then similarly perform them on my violin. I'll have my violin playlist linked if you're interested in seeing any of those. But when The Witcher show came out on Netflix, most of you probably know the particular piece of music that most of us got stuck in our head, and that would be Toss a Coin to Your Witcher. So as soon as I heard that, I'm like, I have to make a cover of this. It's just so fun. It's so cool, and I think it'd be fun to play on my violin. To make the video 1,000 times better, I wanted to include this one artist's amazing artwork of the characters from the Netflix Witcher show, specifically for Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri. I just thought this individual has the most breathtaking, amazing art. I'd already been following them for a long time. They do Horizon Zero Dawn art, they do Tomb Raider art, Game of Thrones. Their Game of Thrones art is absurd. All of their art is so good. And recently, they have some amazing arcane art. It's like all their art, so good. But either way, years ago when I did the Toss a Coin to Your Witcher video, I asked them, like, would it be okay if I included your artwork in this? Your artwork is so amazing. And I'll, of course, link your page in my description bar and make sure that you get some recognition here, but I would love to include that if you're open to it. And they were so nice, and they're like, yeah, of course. Recently, this artist has had a lot of things impact their life as a result of what is happening in the Ukraine. And I recently had been kind of joking around with them about something to do with Arcane, specifically our love for the character Vi. Either way, I was messaging them about their art and about Arcane, and we were chatting a little bit here and there, and I saw that they have a Patreon. And so I joined their Patreon, and I also was chatting with them a little bit about, would it be okay if I shouted out your Instagram, shouted out your Patreon? And they were really moved by that. They said that at this point, it's been difficult to continue to do what they do because of everything going on in the Ukraine. I'm getting emotional looking back at the messages between us because their artwork means so much to them. It is their passion. It is how they make a living. That is their full-time job. And so I just wanted to do what I could to shout them out, to, I don't know, try to give back as far as the amount of joy that I have had in seeing their art, because art is an amazing thing. We already have these amazing stories, and every time I see their artwork, it's like I get that little sliver of joy again. I get all these pieces, all those feelings that I got while consuming the story. I end up feeling those things again through their art. And so I know that a lot of you will feel similarly. Their art is so amazing. I'm on repeat here. I'm just talking about over and over again how amazing their art is. But they're also just such a lovely person. And if you, at the very least, can follow them on Instagram, share their artwork, that's already a fantastic first step. But if you have the means to join their Patreon, it's very affordable. The lowest tier is something I think a lot of us are able to participate in. I know I joined their Patreon, and immediately there's a perk of you get a huge selection of artwork that you can have as backgrounds for your phone or your computer. So I immediately made Jinx from Arcane the background on my computer, and it looks so cool. So if you can join their Patreon, please consider doing so. It is a big form of how they are able to continue to do what they do, to continue to have their passion be their job, and for us to continue to get to have such amazing artwork. They also have art prints available if you are interested in purchasing their art itself. But anyway, that's it for our first news and books. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.